All right, so to finish up this week here on Bang the Book Radio, going to go ahead and talk about some of the situational spots that I'm taking a look at here for this weekend for college basketball, and then also take a look here at the NHL card. And a lot of good situational angles present in all of these sports here at this time of the year, but we do try to focus as much as we possibly can here to look at some things that can help you out for the weekend. And again, these aren't be-all, end-all types of plays. I'm not saying you absolutely have to go out there and play some of this stuff, but what I am saying is that these are good starting points for you. And in particular, when we look at a Saturday college basketball card with 140, 150 games, you get a lot of stuff to try and factor into the equation here. So anything that can help you out, anything that can make your job a little bit easier, we try to do that here with the content over at BangTheBook.com, as well as the content on Bang the Book Radio. We talked about that Kansas and Baylor game in the previous segment with Greg, and like I said, I think that 11 a.m. start time could lead to a little bit of a slow start here in this game. Not a lot of offense in the first game with 122 points between the two teams. I mean, maybe a first half under could be something of a decent look there in that Kansas and Baylor matchup. How about Cal Baptist and Chicago State? Obviously, this is not a game on a lot of people's radars here for Saturday, in particular with such a big college basketball card. But if you think back to a few weeks ago, Cal State Bakersfield was playing that quick turnaround game. They were playing Kansas City, then they were playing Chicago State. The Chicago State game actually got postponed by a day because of a snowstorm that was in the area, kind of wiped out a lot of things. They pushed the game back a day. Chicago State should have covered that game, but they went scoreless, I think, in the last 6.5 minutes of that basketball game, something like that, and just barely failed to cover. Now you've got Cal Baptist playing at UMKC on Wednesday night. Then they play the early game here, 12 o'clock Central Time on Saturday against Chicago State. Now, I do wish that this was one of those Thursday, Saturday turnarounds. Wednesday to Saturday makes it a little bit easier for Cal Baptist. But at the same time, this is a very difficult spot here. You're going a long way from home. Cal Baptist, a relative newcomer to this conference. They haven't really taken this trip a whole lot. I know Chicago State is terrible, but because they're terrible, they're going to be getting a lot of points there in that Saturday game against Cal Baptist. So that one is on my radar here for Saturday. Chicago State getting a lot of points at home in that WAC matchup. Tough week for Villanova here. They're playing a third straight game in a hostile environment. Now, of course, they didn't really have to travel for that Temple game in Philadelphia as part of the Big Five series last Sunday, but they were at DePaul on Wednesday. Now they're in Cincinnati to take on Xavier on Saturday afternoon. Xavier, well-rested. Villanova's been traveling all over the place here. We did talk a little bit about this game on Tuesday's show with John Ryan, who covers the Big East for us over at BangTheBook.com. But I do like Xavier a little bit here because of the spot. Because this is a third straight road opportunity for Villanova, a little bit of fatigue could set in here. I do think Xavier is a home underdog in this spot, and you obviously want to take a look at home underdogs here at this time of the year, in particular if they are pretty good teams. If it's a bad team getting points at home, it's a little bit different unless there's a spot consideration like Chicago State here on Saturday. But Xavier, in this particular situation here, this would be a big feather in their caps as far as trying to get into the NCAA tournament, trying to get improved seeding in the NCAA tournament. I think they may show up a little bit more here than Villanova. So I do like Xavier in that spot on Saturday afternoon. How about East Tennessee State and Samford? Now, I don't think Samford is going to pull the outright upset here. But what I can tell you is that with East Tennessee State off of that game against Furman, getting revenge for that loss to Furman earlier on in the season, I think Samford is a pretty interesting bet here at home. 2 o'clock Central Time start for this one. Maybe Samford in the first half makes some sense before ETSU gets it going. East Tennessee State is a team with some at-large consideration, and that was a game they absolutely had to have the other night against Furman, and they got it. Now I wonder what they do here in this particular spot against Samford. Samford will be getting points at home. Like I said, maybe the first half for them is a decent look, or maybe the full game play here, depending on how many points you're getting in that one. UCLA and Colorado. this is an awful spot for UCLA. Now, this is one of those spots that's so bad, it's actually going to be factored into the price, probably by a pretty good margin. But this is the end of the altitude double for UCLA. They played an 8:30 Mountain Time start against Salt Lake City on Thursday. This is a 2 p.m. Mountain Time start in Boulder. So about a 40-hour turnaround to play back-to-back games in the altitude. I will lay a large number with Colorado here in this game. It's one of my favorite situational spots of the week, and I most definitely like the Buffaloes in this one here against the Bruins. Troy and Appalachian State, kind of a fun game here in the Sun Belt. Troy's playing that Coastal Carolina Appalachian State stretch. As we've talked about before here on the show, and most people don't really realize this, Appalachian State is at altitude there in the Appalachian Mountains in Boone, North Carolina. This is a very difficult turnaround. And we saw that, Appalachian State used this spot to their advantage a few weeks ago against Texas State. Texas State had a big lead, wound up squandering it. App State covered the number there in that one. Troy's not on the level of Texas State, but I think App State's going to be in a good spot here in this one. Maybe a slight home favorite in this game. Neither one of these teams particularly good. Actually, App State maybe a little bit more than a slight favorite here. But I still think that this Coastal Carolina App State stretch is very difficult in Sun Belt play. Give me the Mountaineers here in this one, laying what should be a pretty modest number at home. Stetson and Liberty. Liberty, a very interesting team here for this week because they've lost 2 games in Atlantic Sun play. One was to North Florida, one was to Stetson. They played North Florida earlier on in the week here, and that was a situation where you look at this Liberty team, and look, they are clearly, far and away, the best team here in the A-Sun Conference. So they've got a couple of those losses. They're out for revenge. They're out for the opportunity to try and make up for what happened in those games. Now, they didn't play particularly well against North Florida. They gave up 1.227 points per possession, but they did get revenge. They did win that game over the Ospreys, 82-77. Now they get a Stetson team where, against Stetson, they had their worst offensive performance of the season. It was a hangover game coming off of that North Florida matchup. They had 0.80 points per possession in that game. That game was played to just 54 possessions. Liberty never got going. They will be going from the jump here in this one. They got that North Florida win, and because they've got this revenge factor here, I don't think there's a letdown situation at all whatsoever for Liberty in this spot. I think it named the score. This will be another game played to a pretty low number of possessions, but I think Liberty really buckles down defensively. I think they have a lot more success on the offensive end. So Liberty minus the points here, looking for revenge against Stetson, another spot that I do like on Saturday. Finally, for Saturday here, Gonzaga and BYU. We talked about this game in the previous segment with Greg. You got to wonder if Gonzaga gets tested here. They won the first game by 23 points. They were a 13-point favorite in that one. St. Mary's didn't give Gonzaga a test when the Zags visited them. Will BYU do so at home? I don't know. I think it'll be very interesting to see how this game plays out. A lot of people did like San Francisco a little bit in that game on Thursday night with one of the worst beats we've ever seen in that one. But Gonzaga, they had a little bit of a look-ahead factor in that game, I think. Kind of struggled throughout most of it. Let's see what they do here against the sharpshooting BYU team. I do like Gonzaga a little bit, but obviously not a spot where I'd be super confident laying a whole lot of points in that one. We look ahead to Sunday for a couple of games here. Southern Illinois and Northern Iowa, one on my radar. The Missouri Valley Conference is known for having those big home road splits, and Northern Iowa found that out the hard way. They actually lost at Southern Illinois earlier on in the season. Now they get that crack at home revenge. Northern Iowa's got Evansville on deck, so no look ahead whatsoever. They'll be laying a pretty decent number here, but they've got the revenge angle, and the Southern Illinois Salukis have just been a much better team at home than on the road. So I think this is a spot where Northern Iowa really gets some revenge, really plays well. I do like them laying the number here on Sunday. Finally, South Dakota and South Dakota State as we head on up to the Summit League here. South Dakota State has kind of figured things out a little bit in the back part of conference play. We figured without Mike Daum, they would kind of struggle at the outset of the season, and they did. And in fact, they lost to South Dakota earlier on in the year. That was the first time in 5 tries that South Dakota beat South Dakota State. South Dakota State has not lost at home, and they just lost to South Dakota earlier on this season. I think the Jackrabbits will look to get revenge here. The Coyotes from South Dakota, they've shot the lights out from 3 this year. I think some regression is coming for them. I think it's a really good opportunity for South Dakota State. So looking at a lot of home teams here this weekend, looking for spots to back them. You've got some revenge spots. You've got some bad travel scenarios for teams. But I do like several home games here for this weekend, including teams like Chicago State, Xavier, Samford, Colorado, Appalachian State, Liberty, Northern Iowa, and finally, South Dakota State. A couple spots in the NHL to keep an eye on here for this weekend. A pretty interesting one here between Washington and the New Jersey Devils early on Saturday. The Capitals are going to play the Penguins on Sunday in one of those big games, the Sunday NBC game of the week. They're still waiting on Alex Ovechkin to get that 700th goal. The Capitals could be in a little bit of a sleepy spot here against the Devils. As we talked about on Tuesday with Brian Blessing, Washington just keeps trying to set up Ovechkin. They're not playing the same game that they're generally accustomed to. I do wonder if maybe that is a little bit of a hindrance for them as they lay a big price here on Saturday. Not saying I would take the Devils on the money line for anything big. May take a little bit of a piece of that, but Devils plus 1.5 at home in a game where I think Washington will very clearly be looking ahead to that situation on Sunday, against the Pittsburgh Penguins. How about the Florida Panthers and the Vegas Golden Knights? Panthers here playing a 4-6 road stretch against Vegas, and Vegas has turned this thing around. They're playing very, very well right now. They look like a well-rounded team. They look like a team that wants to be a buyer at the trade deadline. So I think Vegas is in a very good spot here against Florida, a tired, ragged Florida bunch with this long road trip here. I think Vegas on the puck line is a good look. If you want to play the -1, I think that's a decent look as well. I think Vegas could be dominant here in this game. I know Florida's taking on a familiar face in Peter DeBoer, but Vegas is playing very, very well. They're in a good situational spot here. I think you've got to take a look at the Golden Knights with either the puck line or maybe some alternate lines here in this game against Florida on Saturday. I'm not sure how high this price will be, but Colorado is on the road at Los Angeles on Saturday. Now, the Avalanche have a lot of injury considerations, a lot of guys that they're worried about right now, but they're also going for revenge here from the Stadium Series game last Saturday. They lost that game 3-1. It wasn't a great look overall for the organization. A lot of travel problems. People couldn't get into the game. Then, of course, Colorado kind of lays an egg after that. They have to have this game circled. They absolutely have to be looking forward to this one to get some revenge here. Now, the Kings have played better at home than they have on the road, but still, I think they're going to get a pissed off, motivated Colorado bunch here. I do like the Avalanche. They will be laying a little bit of a number, maybe a money line parlay with Vegas and Colorado, something like that. But I do think you need to find a creative way to play the Avalanche on Saturday. That Pittsburgh and Washington game on Sunday will be a good one. I look for fade spots coming out of that game. I think maybe we've got one here on Tuesday with Washington taking on Winnipeg. So that's kind of what I'm looking at out of this game, but it's just a 4-6 for Pittsburgh, a 4-7 for Washington. Pittsburgh doesn't play until Wednesday, so maybe not as much of a fade spot coming up after this game for them, but it always means more when these two teams get together. Crosby and Ovechkin, game of the week. Obviously there's going to be a playoff type feel to this one. I don't know who that favors necessarily, but both of these teams are in back-to-back situations, should have their better goaltenders going on Sunday. Maybe kind of go against the grain of the NHL this season and play an under for this game. I don't know, but should be a very good one here on Sunday. Finally, the Sharks and the Islanders here on Sunday. Now, the Sharks don't have to travel because they play the New York Rangers on Saturday night. Then they play the Islanders here on Sunday with a 5 o'clock Eastern puck drop. So they've got a pretty quick turnaround here. They got about a 17-hour turnaround between games. So that's a pretty difficult spot for them, even without the travel. The Islanders don't play on Saturday, and the Islanders have struggled here of late. So no spots are particularly great for them. But at the same time, I think they're in a much better situational spot here. Maybe a little bit of a get-right game for the Islanders on Sunday with that 5 o'clock puck drop against the San Jose Sharks. Coming up on our Monday edition of Bang the Book Radio, we'll chat with professional handicapper Kyle Hunter from huntersportspicks.com and also bettersportspicks.com. We'll fill you in on some of the conference tournament formats because I think that's very important here with the last couple weeks of the regular season, seeing the teams that won't be able to be in these different types of things, seeing the teams that are maybe playing for seeding or playing for buys, something like that. Those contribute to a lot of motivating factors over the last couple of weeks of the college basketball regular season. We'll also talk with him about Senior Day and a handful of games for next week's card. And also, I'll be back with the Bettors Box, my MLB betting podcast, my Five and Fly segment looking at all 5 Central Division teams. Also taking a look at some of the updated injury situations across Major League Baseball with spring training. And in the meantime, make sure you download that MLB betting guide over at BangTheBook.com in PDF form, or you can go through and look at the individual articles at the website. Put a lot of hard work into that. I think there's a lot of good information. I'm very proud of the product here. 250-page PDF for you to look over here this weekend and in the lead up to the season. I've got 7 plays that I've already made from a season win total standpoint in that guide over at BangTheBook.com, and there are a few others that I'm still considering. So a lot of good information there. Please make sure you check it all out.